Today's episode of Prop Culture is brought to you by Hillis-Carnes Engineering Associates. Folks, when it comes to engineering, Hillis-Carnes is ready for any challenge, from the roof to the ground and down. And speaking of ground and down, well, folks, we're about to get down. That's right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Prop Culture Podcast. I am your host, Matt Trader. And to my left, as always, is my tag team partner, Mr. Shane Snoots. And ladies and gentlemen, today, in the words of Ed Sullivan, we got a really big shoe, really big shoe lined up for you. That's right, folks, because with us in the studio, we have our sponsor, Hillis-Carnes Engineering Associates. We have two distinct members from their office. We have with us Mr. Nick Fulford and Mr. Josh Miller. Nick is the guy who runs the environmental division, and Josh is the manager of the construction site materials testing. Is that right, guys? I get that right?
That's correct.
All right. Well, good to have you guys on the show here today. We appreciate you guys being here. Nick,
Sure. Yeah,
I've known you for some time. I think you're just meeting Shane. Josh, I'm just meeting you. So we're all friends at this point, right?
Yeah.
So before we get too far into this show today, why don't you tell us a little bit about Hills-Carnes and exactly what you guys do and what you offer?
Sure. Well, Matt, first of all, thanks for having us on. Appreciate that. My name's Nick Fulford. I'm the Senior Environmental Project Manager of the Delmarva region. Hills-Carnes, of course, has offices in Maryland, Delaware, Pennsylvania, Virginia, even a Barbados office. And sometimes folks been known to fight over that one. Yeah. But long story short, we have a presence all over the place. And myself, I run our environmental division. I've said that already. Yeah. Congratulations. Mainly what I do is when commercial real estate folks want to make a property transaction, I do environmental due diligence for them. We make sure that we don't have any environmental concerns. A lot of times, the banks, more often than not, the banks will require that service. Yeah. And a lot of times, just, buyers will also want to limit their liability. Yeah. You want to make sure that, they're not buying any problems. You don't want to ante up for a property and find out you got $400,000 or $500,000 worth of cleanup. So we try to make sure, for a small fee that you guys don't have that problem. So
absolutely.
That's a little bit about what I do. And Josh?
Yeah, my name's Josh Miller. I run the construction materials testing division at Hills-Carnes in the Salisbury office. I guess what you could say the main part of what I do is quality control. Yeah. So when you get the project started, getting out of the ground, we make sure, try to prevent any problems that's going to happen. We try to anticipate, and if you do have any trouble, we'll help you out of a jam.
Yeah. So I know a little bit more about what you do, Nick, just because we run into each other on projects and things of that nature.
Exactly.
I've never heard of a construction site materials testing manager, right?
Yeah.
So tell us, give me some examples of what that entails.
Like, a little bit of the nitty gritty, I guess. The day-to-day, we test soils, we test concrete, we test asphalt. Yeah. So when you start your job, you have a set of drawings, right? Yeah. So we check to make sure things are being done as per the drawings.
Okay.
Awesome. Yeah. So you make sure everything's on pace. With
right. Has to meet a specific strength. Same thing as soil.
Yeah.
Specific parameters,
So is this for new development, just for what if it's existing? You guys do the same.
Oh yeah, same deal for existing
or new development too. Okay, all right. That makes sense.
I'd say it's probably more so new development, but existing as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So even if somebody comes in with a plot that they're redeveloping, right? You come back in and you still do the same stuff. Make sure everything's
right.
Quality control wise.
Well, yeah, definitely quality control.
That everything's staying on pace with what they've redeveloped or the new development itself.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
What kind of you working on big projects right now? What kind of projects you working on?
Well, we've got a couple of Mardella Middle and High School. They're doing an addition out there. That's a pretty big job for us.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that. You're doing that deal?
Yeah, we're doing that one. They got another new building going up at Warwick that we're working on. Okay. Been doing a little bit over here at the Ross, the big skyscraper here.
You guys are working on that building?
We're doing a little bit over there.
Man, so you guys got some big projects going on.
We got some stuff going on. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I love seeing the Warwick area blow up, man. I've always thought that.
It's always something going up.
Well, I mean, they're on the right side of the bypass. You're catching all that traffic heading to Ocean City. Right. I just think there's a lot of potential for development down there in the future. And then there's a community college next door. Yeah. Or in that same trajectory, excuse me. But yeah. So look, being in commercial real estate, we work with engineers all the time. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's we can all name them, right? But we won't name your competition on the show, right? But what do you guys do to set yourself apart that maybe you do differently than the rest of the engineers out there? What do you guys offer?
Well, Hills-Carnes is, of course, a big company. We have a lot of in-house equipment some of our competitors don't. Enables us to come at projects a little bit more competitively, especially from a geotech standpoint, where we actually have to drill into the ground, take soil samples, give you bearing capacities, discuss foundation designs. We are pretty technically advanced. We have a lot of electronics in place, which enable us to get reports out pretty quick. Josh can speak to that a little bit more, especially with the construction materials testing side. There's so many reports, all the daily reports.
We everything's electronic for us, so we send out work orders to our field staff. And then I get them back into the office, we review them, and we can have the capability to send them out the next day. So instead of waiting weeks or even months for a report to get into your hands, we can, with the technology, get them out to you right away.
We have a lot of offices to draw from, a lot of experience across the company, decades. And, it gives us an edge. You know, if it's not something we've run across, it's something somebody else has run across in other locations. Just, it really helps us respond. And just this past year, we've really hit a real busy time with everybody trying to get in ahead of the interest rates, and this, of course. And we've actually expanded our capabilities specifically right here in Delmarva, so we can turn around due diligence a lot faster, which has helped because certainly we don't want to slow anything down and keep people out of locking in interest rates before the rises and things of that nature. A lot of our staff, we're versed in every part of the company too. It's not, it's not just Nick Fulford operates in environmental. I also do geotechnical. I've done construction materials testing. Josh has a pretty good idea of what I do, and we all support each other. Drilling is a big part of Hills-Carnes. It's something that I've done myself. It's something that Josh is staffed. A lot of times we shift.
Lots of moving parts.
All the time. So we're never understaffed because of that.
That's awesome. So you guys are all like utility players.
Yes. That's correct.
It's funny, man. You talk about scenarios and then being experienced in so many different things and going back with your history. It's like baseball, right? It's always about, like, I know how to play this scenario because I've been through it before. And you guys have, like, I don't know how many locations, but I know you expand as far as Wisconsin, I think, is about the furthest you go. Is that true? No?
Not quite that far.
Pittsburgh, I think.
Maybe Pittsburgh.
The furthest
I knew it was
west.
up in that area. Okay.
Well, Barbados is pretty far.
Yeah, right.
You did say Barbados. Yeah, I missed that. But either way, how does I guess things differ in this area in Delmarva compared to maybe some other states? I mean, what are we seeing right now?
Just technically speaking, geologically, everything here is quite sandy. It's getting into the geotechnical side of things. When we drill here, we're dealing with sands. Some mixes of other materials, silts and clays. When they go over on the other side of the bridge, it's a much different scenario. Everything's rock hard. Hard clays and silts, things of that nature. Weathered rock. So that's, technically speaking, that's something here. As far as, the clientele, things here are probably a little bit more laid back. I've operated myself in D.C. for some bigger projects, some of the RFK Stadium redevelopment for the soccer field. I think, it's a soccer recreational field. And it's just a different mindset there. Everything is, can it be done in 2 hours? Can it be done in 2 hours? Here, folks are a little bit more laid back in that regard. But with that said, we don't like to treat anybody differently. We still want to meet our timelines and, but that's just to give you an idea of some difference.
That's just that side of the bridge, man. That's where I'm from. If the drive time says 30 minutes, they want to be there in 10.
100%.
And I mean, they'll wreck you off the road. When we had driving courses, this is the honest truth. Like, they take you on 270, 340, like all your major highways. And they're like, you got to lead with nose. Like, you got to cut over. You got to make sure they see. Like, so over there on that side of the bridge, that's how everything is. Like, so I can understand from a clientele basis. Coming from over there to over here, it's the same thing.
And we work in both areas. Just like I told you guys, we're very utility oriented. So often, more so in years past, I've had to go over there and let me tell you something about DC. Either you get on the site at 7, or you show up at 10.
Right.
Yeah.
There's no in between. Because if you try to get there at 8:30, forget it.
Yeah, exactly.
Sit there for 2 hours wasting time.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the thing is, you set the expectation from the beginning.
Yeah.
It sounds like across the board, no matter where you're at, you always are open line of communication.
Yes.
So you're setting the expectation right up front where you're going to be at deadlines, and you meet those deadlines on both sides. But just from that standpoint over there, they're always going to want it, a day earlier.
100%.
It's a day earlier
So you go
and $1 cheaper too.
You go into it with that mindset, and that, again, that's another thing that kind of separates us. We like to communicate with our clients.
Oh,
hey,
yeah.
this is happening. We've run into this. A lot of times going through a phase 1 environmental site assessment, rather than just go through the whole report, which takes the longest part of the process, I like to reach out to the clients and say, hey, I think we got a problem here. Let's talk about some soil and groundwater sampling so we can see if this problem is really a problem or if it's just something that the paperwork shows might be a problem.
Yeah.
Now, do you guys work with like independent so do you work with contractors hand in hand, like with these sites, like when you come out and do testing and all that kind of stuff? Do you already have on staff, or is it subs that maybe the owner of the development already has gotten, and you're sending work orders over to? Like, how does that work?
See, it's different for each one of the divisions.
Yeah.
In the environmental due diligence side of things, a lot of times we're working for the actual prospective buyer.
Okay.
Sometimes we work for the seller, but mainly property owners or prospective property owners. Sometimes we work directly for the banks.
Okay.
And when we do, like the soil and water investigation, again, going back to an advantage that Hills-Carnes has, we don't sub out the drilling.
Okay.
We have it right in-house. We have all of our drilling equipment and capabilities in-house.
Okay, perfect.
And that helps us not only from a monetary standpoint, but we can get there faster.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these other folks, they have to reach out to a sub. Well, that sub has a long list of jobs that they have.
And then it sounds like the right's communicating with the left.
Yes.
So it's a lot easier. So when you're talking to this person on this side, and they work in literally the same company, it's significantly easier to get that done. And probably communication wise, there's no lapse. Mm-hmm. Because I know how it is. I work in property management.
Sure.
And it's a lot easier when you have subs that do everything than subbing out something to, I got to get a plumber, got to get it. Because not everyone's on the same page at all times.
That's 100% right.
Yeah.
So.
And with Josh is a little different. So.
Yeah. So we, a lot of the work that my group does is, working for general contractors, owners, developers, that kind of stuff. We don't sub hardly anything out. Very rarely do we have any subs with my side of things.
Yeah, so it sounds like it was interesting. You said you create work orders and send those right out from the field.
Right.
So how does that work? Like, is there a system? What kind of system do you use?
Yeah, so it's all, online. So, we'll get calls from the client saying we need a guy here to do, whatever type of testing. Mm-hmm. I'll put it into the computer at night. We'll send it out to whatever, field tech needs to do that work. And we just kind of try to piece it all together, and that's a real advantage we have over our competition. They're all old-fashioned, just writing things down on a tablet or a piece of paper, and this is where you got to go. But we're moving things around constantly, man.
So and it sounds like this system can probably house all of those notes for that project.
Yep, everything's built right into the system.
So if there's anything that goes wrong or anything that you need to communicate with the client, you can kind of send it out through that system.
Exactly.
And it's all housed there, which is pretty cool. I mean, it's pretty neat in terms of, you're talking about competition wise. If you're getting a piece of paper or if it's getting emailed to you, you have it forever.
Right.
I'll lose a piece of paper.
Yeah,
sure.
Exactly.
I mean, my truck is a nightmare to get into right now. So when you talk about that, that's a huge advantage to have and plus it sounds like you can get the reports out right away.
Right away, exactly.
So problem solving is faster than fast.
Yeah, no, it's obvious, if you can get your information right away, as opposed, it may be forgotten about if you're waiting weeks or months or whatever for a report.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing too. Like you said, technology I found is a huge piece of being ahead of especially competitors, and especially when you have a system like that. And if people are still using paper or anything, even if you have to type up the email to get out, if you have a system that's sending out work orders and they can relay back to the system can send out to a client, that's huge. because you're cutting so much time out.
Yeah.
That's big for clients. I mean, that has to be a big deal for you guys.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, what I'm hearing right now is you guys are really focused on speed. And obviously, like I think we already, realize this. We live in a very service-driven, world right now where everybody wants things right now.
Everybody wants it now,
If you can't deliver right now, they're going to find somebody who will, right?
We see that a lot.
Yeah, and one of the things that, Nick, you were talking about, and you touched on it briefly, was right now, and I see this all the time, there's so many people in my industry that are scrambling to get deals done right now out of fear because we don't know where the economy's headed.
Yeah.
And I know you touched on the fact that you guys are seeing a lot of that. What are some of the ways, maybe even beyond the technology, that you guys are helping people get to the finish line faster than maybe even normal?
Well, like I said, when we go through the phase 1 process, most of the time is in the report itself. When we do the investigations, we're going to the sites, we're talking to the landowner, the occupants. We're doing our database searches. We can do that kind of quick, and we can start figuring out if there's a problem relatively quickly.
Yeah.
And if there is, then what we do is we reach out and say, guys, look, I think we're going to have to do soil and groundwater sampling here rather than waiting, for the 4 to 6 week period that you signed up for in the contract for us to turn over the phase 1 report.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and let's get a proposal together for the phase 2, and we can get that moving congruently with the phase 1. So that saves us a lot of time.
Yeah.
And, sometimes, Matt, and even you and I have had experience, sometimes there can be conditions that are just, they're hard for deals.
Yeah.
But we're going to keep on trying to work through them the best we can, find the best practical solution to make everybody happy and not log jam the process, because that's not what we're here to do.
I know from working with you guys in the past, man, I mean, there's no BS to it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to deliver bad news.
Yeah, that's right.
You're like a doctor,
Yeah.
and it's just the way it is. And you got to find somebody that's either willing to get over it or willing to assume the risk involved in some of these projects.
That's the key. I mean, some clients, they don't mind the risk. Some clients, they do. And you just got to find the right buyer sometimes.
One of the things that always comes up, and other agents ask, and there's a lot of people out there that may not really know the difference between a phase 1 and a phase 2.
Sure.
Tell our audience right now, just in layman terms.
So the phase 1 is pretty simple. There is no soil, no groundwater sampling. That's the easiest way to remember it. We're doing a document review. We're looking visually at the property for signs of problems. We're going through our database record, Freedom of Information Act requests to the various state or local agencies, and that's really it. And then we're going to write a report that basically says, when you cut through everything, it's our professional opinion that there is a need for additional environmental investigation, or there's not. So that's it. That's the phase 1 process. Now, the phase 2 is where we actually go, we grab our soil sample, we look for whatever, chemical concern is, the focus of that project. And, we give you the results. This is what it is compared to whatever regulatory limit that's appropriate for the project.
Yeah.
And that's it. So the real easy way is phase 1, no soil, no groundwater sampling. Phase 2, soil, groundwater sampling, sometimes air sampling, vapor sampling, things like that.
Yeah. No phase 2 is always a good feeling when I'm on the end of a deal, like no phase deal. Yeah. We're good.
That's always best case.
I always like that.
So phase 2 is actually if you need more additional, if you're recommending for additional sampling.
Correct. Or for additional environmental investigation.
Okay.
Because the way we either validate or refute our concerns is through whatever concentrations of chemicals you have in the soil or groundwater.
So it could be a bad thing.
It could be. But at the same time,
unless you got a cash buyer.
Well, not always though.
I'm just messing. Yeah.
No, but I mean, Matt, it's not wrong.
I know.
At the same time,
I'm just being honest.
If you have a cash buyer,
no lender.
You will often find that cash buyers accept a little bit more risk than banks do.
Yeah.
So, but long story short, oh man, now I forgot what I was.
Well, let me say something real quick. As I always tell my clients, no matter if you have cash or what, always get an environmental report done, no matter what, for a peace of mind. And if you're going to do that,
you a lot of money.
These are the men to call. It can cost you a lot of money. Exactly.
And actually, I just required my train of thought. So, what happens actually? The phase 2 is not always just bad. Okay. Yeah. What we're doing here is we're establishing landowner liability protections for our clients.
Yeah.
So what that means is somebody can buy a property. I know there's contamination there, but listen. it was there before I bought the property.
Yeah.
Okay. If the buyer is not going to disturb that contamination, for instance, there's petroleum contamination 6-7 foot in the ground.
Yeah.
And the buyer wants to buy the property, the building's already there. They're really not going to do anything outside of renovate it.
Yeah.
You know, it's on city sewer and water. They can buy that property, and that liability is not theirs because that was there before they bought the property. You're establishing a chain that says, look, this was here. Now, there's a couple caveats to that. If that, and this is rare, I've been doing this for 19 years, I've not come across this. If somebody was an employee on that property of the owner or whatever business that operated there and somehow contributed to that contamination and then went and bought the property, then I can't, limited liability protections are just not going to apply.
Yeah.
But it's a very, very rare scenario. Like I said, I've not come across it myself in 19 years.
Yeah.
So
that's okay. Well, that's a good piece of information.
Basically, you're offering environmental insurance.
More or less.
That's what you are.
Yeah.
And somebody may, balk at the idea of paying you guys thousands of dollars now, but you're potentially saving them hundreds, millions of dollars.
Could be.
Later.
Yeah.
So one of the things we'll talk to you about, because I did mention my clients, I'm always trying to give my clients information. Right now, obviously we've changed bureaucracy in the country and things are changing all the time. What are some new kind of regulatory practices that you're seeing that these guys might have to deal with in the future?
So the phase 1 process is conducted under ASTM 1527. The most recent in place version is 13. So ASTM 1527-13 for the year 2013. Those were the most recent changes. In 2021, they enacted a new standard. However, it takes a long time for the federal government to review it, go through the comment period, and actually put it in place.
Yeah.
So the 21 standard has been written, but it's not in place yet. So that's something that's going to happen. The good thing for clients is Hills-Carnes is well aware of this. We know the subtle differences between the two practices, and when that becomes the enacted standard, then we'll contact you. I just recently had somebody reach out asking for the new standard, and I told them, I said, guys, we can do that. It's not a problem. However, it's not necessarily going to be advantageous. This particular was part of the green energy that you and I were talking about. A lot of these solar projects, they change hands multiple times. The reports have a shelf life, so they have to be updated ever so often or completely done again if it's been years. So I explained to them, in your particular circumstance, it's probably not going to be advantageous. So just let's stick with the 13 standard. That's what we do. We can do it quicker, of course, till the 21 standard comes along and we're adapted to it.
Absolutely.
And that's it. But that's really the only change. And it's really regardless of whoever's president, whoever's in Congress, these agencies are so far removed from commonplace politics. Those standards don't really change as far as how fast they're updating.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think they have to be updated every so often, regardless of the situation. I believe with the ASTM, it's an independent organization. I think it's every 7-8 years that they more or less look it over and refresh and change anything that they feel.
Are they ever more drastic? Like those changes ever more drastic? Have you ever seen them?
I've never seen anything drastic, but I don't know about Nick's.
The 05 to 013, or I'm sorry, the 05 to 13 standard changed a little bit. We had to consider vapor concerns. A lot of times, with the 05 standard, if you have gasoline or petroleum, whatever, any kind of volatile product that's in the ground, and you just have a building on top of it, in 05, it wasn't so much of a concern because you're only worried about through soil and groundwater media. In the 13 standard, they actually expanded it to include, air concentrations. And we never had to consider that before. I mean, it's not a huge difference, but it is a difference, and it was probably one of the more significant. There was also some title review stuff that they added as well, activity use limitations, environmental cleanup liens. Those had to be searched to make sure somebody wasn't getting into a mess, more or less, without knowing.
Now, are these reports, are they grandfathered in with the new, so like, let's just say the new stuff takes effect January 1st.
Sure.
As long as your study is complete, the process of the purchase is done before then, you're still covered under the
100%.
old. Okay. All right, that makes sense.
Yep. And like I was telling you, there's a shelf life.
Yeah.
108. If you do the report and you don't actually make the property transaction until 180 days or more, you have to update parts of that phase one.
Okay.
Now, if you go over that and get into a year plus, the whole report has to be done again.
Okay, that answers a lot of my questions. Because I get a lot of deals that come through that an environmental was just done 2 years prior to it selling. I'm like, can you just update the old one? So that helps me a lot.
Now, you can use some of the
So
information.
180 days. 180 days is when it basically becomes invalid again, or
180 days, and I may have misspoke earlier. It's within 180 days that you may need to update the interviews in a couple of databases and things of that nature. After that 180-day period, you actually have to do the whole report again. But it's like I was just saying, you use a lot of the prior report because obviously the historical records of 1937 didn't change. So, you'll reuse a lot of the same information.
So when you were talking about between 2005 and 2013, it's when things kind of was probably you've seen your biggest drastic move in the standards. Do you think the crisis in 2008 played a big role in that change? Because I know banks were tightening up, everybody was trying to assume less risk back then.
That's a good question.
I mean, do you think that might have played a role in it at all? Or?
I don't think so. But Matt, I couldn't rule that out. To be honest with you, but that's a great question. I mean, it's certainly the idea is always to limit the risk with these these new standards, like the 21 standard. Well, we have CERCLA hazardous waste that we have to look for, hazardous chemicals. Yeah. And then we have petroleum products. Okay. Now, in the 21 standard, they've actually included something potential environmental future concerns. And my verbiage isn't exact on that, but more or less the idea is we actually have to start giving thought process to things that aren't technically defined as hazardous, but we may believe they may head that way in the future. Yeah. The EPA updates their, acceptable risk tables all the time. Especially, I think it was 16 through 19, there was like 3 or 4 revisions where there hadn't been really many before that time period. So, I think to answer that question, I think they're always looking to limit risk by, increasing the scope of what we do. But it has to be also practical too.
Yeah.
You guys are talking about green energy a lot. You're seeing a lot of green deals right now. You're working a lot of.
Oh yeah, I mean, I haven't been involved in too many here recently, but solar's all over the place. There's been talks about offshore wind kind of stuff, and I mean, this stuff, it may not be here yet, but it's definitely coming.
It's happening.
What do you do for those type of projects? Like, maybe you mentioned it, and I missed it, but
not really. I mean, on my side, I like Josh.
Yeah, I think with Nick's it'd be typical of anything else you do, right?
Yeah, I mean, more or less. Like I was saying to you earlier, the market kind of slowed down a little bit for us, but then here came some of these green energy projects that got us going again. And for like a bigger project, like some of the offshore wind stuff, those are comprehensive. It depends. Is the land already owned? Well, if it is and they're doing it, they don't need really environmental due diligence, at least not from a phase 1 standpoint. But what they do need is a lot of construction materials testing and some possible geotechnical investigation.
Geotechnical.
Which is, they need to figure out what kind of soils, what kind of foundations they're going to have for these substations and different, infrastructure improvements that they're going to have in place.
So I've heard you use the phrase geotechnical a couple times. Elaborate a little bit more on what geotechnical means in terms of what you guys do.
So that's almost, sometimes it's lumped in, and to be honest with you, oftentimes it's lumped in with the environmental due diligence part. Yeah. Well, you got, somebody comes to you, Matt, and they have plans for a big building, Well, they don't want to buy the property unless they know the soils can support that proposed 2, 3, 4-story structure. Yeah. Or, they want to know ahead of time that the soils are bad and they're going to have to put in a lot more money into improving the foundation. So to answer your question kind of in a nutshell, you need to know what kind of soil you have, what kind of bearing capacity it's going to support, which in turn gives you what kind of foundation system you're going to have. Also, you want to know what kind of settlement you're going to have. The buildings and the foundation all have to be designed to deal with that, because you don't want to have a building in place and then it settles 3 or 4 inches and now you got stress cracks and really bad stuff all over the place.
A geotech is more insurance, just like the environmental stuff. It gives you insurance that what you're proposing to build is going to last and be there 30, 40, 50 years from now.
Maybe this is more of a construction question, but Give me an example. What type of foundations correlate with certain types of soil?
Okay.
I don't know if that's a good question or not, but yeah.
So in Ocean City, you have a lot of silts and, a lot of ocean deposits.
Yeah.
And the soil is not great.
Yeah.
So what happens is they put in deep piles.
Okay.
And they have to, go 30, 40 feet until they can find, some hard sand or something along those lines. And, so they'll essentially bridge through the, not sufficient soil, so to speak, and get to something that's much better. And that's very common in Ocean City.
Okay.
Now, the downside with those kind of foundations is they're more expensive. Right. There's a lot more involved. And something Hills-Carnes does that a lot of our competitors don't. We have in-house in situ testing, which is cone penetrometer testing and flat blade dilatometer testing. And what these are, a standard geotech boring is standard penetration testing.
Yeah.
We drill in the ground, we drop a spoon with a 140-pound hammer. It falls the same distance every time, and it gives you blow counts. That's the traditional way to do geotechnical evaluations.
Okay.
With the cone penetrometer testing and the flat blade dilatometer testing, it gives you more precise parameters.
Yeah.
It shows you, dissipation, how fast is the water going to leave the soil, which, determines how much and how fast the building is going to settle, things of that nature. And the reason that's important is those tests are a little bit more expensive than the standard penetration testing, but it could save you $300,000 and $400,000, $1 million, depending on whatever on your foundation design. If we find out through that more precise testing that you don't need those piles, but it doesn't always work out like that.
I know you working with multifamily guys all the time. You probably come across a lot of this on the development side with some of your clients.
This is picking sites is a lot harder than you think.
And we do that a lot.
Picking sites is a lot harder. When it's a full redevelopment, the process for those guys is a lot harder because it has to sustain a lot more than just a commercial use, because you got 250 units, 120 units. So site wise, it's a lot harder to pick a site than I ever knew. I thought you see a piece of land,
just buy it up.
then you develop it. But like you guys are talking about, I mean, again, I'm not too into the process of it, but when now it all makes sense when they're like, well, the soil has to be this, or there could be contamination for the well.
That too.
You're like, all this goes into multifamily. Like, what do you mean? Like, I think you just pick a piece of land and you do. I mean, it sounds stupid when I say it out loud like that, because you're like, obviously this is $1 million project.
Your job's to lease them, not to build them. So
my job's to lease them, not build them. But when I'm sitting here and thinking about it, I'm like, when they tell me it's common sense, what you guys do is actually mitigate the risk for them.
Yes, exactly.
100%.
And and we get into it like when you're talking about feasibility studies. Sometimes it's as simple as sending somebody out with a hand auger. And just, hey, I think we're good. We do a lot of spread out residential subdivisions, individual dwellings, and we just go out there and hand auger a few spots. I think you're good. Or wait a minute, this lot here is a problem. Anticipate so much undercutting, things of that nature, backfilling with good fill.
There's a couple things like I know. There's a couple projects, I won't mention them. Like, I know that we were involved in, and more southwise in Princess Anne stuff, that like they had 4 units or 4 buildings built, and I guess the original study called for 6. Didn't build the other 2
because didn't do it. Because of the bad land, they couldn't afford to do it.
Bad land.
Now, a lot of that comes in with the geotech. So one guy may come in and say, hey, this land's no good, you can't do anything with it. But with the advanced methods that Nick was talking about, he may come in and say, hey, this is going to work here. And we can prove it, and you can go ahead and build your other 2 buildings. You just got to modify the soils or change the foundations, whatever the case may be.
Well, I think that's a part of what you guys could offer someone on the front end of actually protecting them in terms of saying either, hey, this is legitimate, or no, because they put the foundations in. And they put the foundations in for the 2 other buildings. And I'll tell you off air who it is or where it's at. But that's where I'm like, you have these 2 foundations that don't work. You can't build on them.
I mean, we can go in there.
So it's such an eyesore. You're like,
right.
You're like, what the hell? Why would you do this? But somebody told them that it was feasible at one point. But then when it actually came to building, Someone came in and was like, no, you can't do this.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. So, or something has to be done.
Sure.
So I guess getting accurate information up front
is very
is
important.
huge
Yeah.
in terms of these projects. I mean, I only work on the family side. You work more on the commercial side, but you do both.
Yeah.
So I've seen it on all aspects where you need accurate information, especially if that land or ground can handle
Sure.
whatever the infrastructure is.
And that's the thing. Like, that's the idea with the geo.
Yeah.
The geo is going to tell you this is what the settlement's going to be.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah,
can,
there's
and
a
they can
certain
account
amount of
for that.
settlements that's acceptable.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and then if they can game plan for that ahead of time.
And there's other parts of that too. Like, for instance, Josh in the CMT division.
Yeah.
So, Josh will use the Geotech report.
Yeah.
And they have bearing capacity in there.
Yeah.
And that we send technicians out
Yeah.
to verify that.
Yeah.
So you got the report, and then we got our guy out in the field verifying that more or less the report's correct and it's going to work.
Exactly. Because look, at the end of the day, you are only drilling in a few select spots. There
Yeah.
can be pocket problems. So not only do we do it ahead of time,
Yeah.
but if there's an issue discovered during the construction phase,
Yeah.
then we can get out in front of it
Yeah.
so you don't have those kind of problems. Or missing piers,
Yeah.
things like that. Foundations not actually according to plan.
Yeah.
All of those things will contribute to failing structures.
That's the stuff that we look for when we're out in the field, make sure everything's built per plan, per the project documents, and make sure nothing's getting missed.
You mentioned Ocean City. You guys doing a lot of projects in Ocean City right now? I know it's moving like that. That market's moving like big
No,
gangbusters
it's
for us.
crazy. We don't do a whole lot of out there, but certainly like to do more.
Yeah.
My question is, what about like waterfront, like Millsboro, Delaware, all that stuff? Because I've seen such an influx out there, and the land that was out there that was open,
Gobbled up. Yeah.
I mean, it's gobbled up, but it was like water. It was like wetlands at one point, and they're putting infrastructure on top of it. They're putting apartments.
Sure.
They're putting condos, stuff like that. Is that stuff like that? Do you see stuff where that could be down the road? I mean, I'm assuming they've paid someone to do this.
Sure.
But it always worried me from a standpoint. I went out and looked at a couple of these units in just terms of like the condos built in Long Neck, and I'm like, this is built
all
literally
swamp.
on top
Yeah,
of
right.
water. Like,
Sure.
and so when it rains,
Yeah.
so in stuff like that, having you guys come on, you guys would say, hey, liability wise, this is good, this is bad, this is what could happen.
Well, we'll figure it out. We'll figure out a way to build on that land.
Yeah. So in terms of, if they don't have somebody like you guys, just say they got someone, mom and pop to come out and write a report.
Yeah.
There could be a liability long term if something happens, or
Well, that brings me to another point that it ties into the advantage of Hills-Carnes.
Yeah, okay.
Listen,
Yeah.
Hills-Carnes is a big company with
Yeah.
a $50+ million engineering firm. Every now and then there can be an issue.
Yeah.
What are you getting as a backup for your issue?
Yeah.
We carry more than industry standard insurance.
Right, right.
Seldom do we have problems like that. But
Yeah.
in the real world, you have to be prepared. Now,
Yeah.
if you hire somebody that was 15% cheaper, but they're operating out of not even an office.
Mom and pop shop.
Yeah.
They can hide and shut their doors and run away.
Yeah, what are you going to do when you have?
well, you sue them, they got nothing to say.
They got nothing. Yeah.
Because I mean they don't even if their insurance covers $500,000, that ain't covering a complex or a major facility.
Yeah, that's right.
So I mean, not that you guys want to be in that jam at all,
Absolutely not.
but the protection that you're offering your client
Yes.
Exactly.
is bigger than that. And I mean,
Because you have to keep in mind, we're doing, especially on the other side of the bridge, some of these projects are
Huge.
$50 million, $100 million projects. So that insurance coverage that we have is allocated for those big projects. So, while you point out some stuff here on the beach, most of that stuff is not quite the same scale as some of those larger projects that we're handling, but we're prepared, to cover ourselves if something happens.
Yeah.
But like I said, you don't want to be in that arena, but you still have to have that coverage in place.
We all know, and again, we'll talk. I mean, I hate talking about it, but it's the largest gorilla in the room. When it comes to suing time, they're looking for who's got the most money.
Sure.
They're not looking for Joe Schmo. They don't care.
Right.
They could have a real estate agent telling them it was the best piece of property to buy,
Yeah.
and there's no issues. That real estate agent, they ain't got anything to sue them for.
Sure.
At the end of the day, if you guys are the ones performing the study and you co-sign to it, they want you guys to back that, right?
That's right.
So, but you guys, it sounds like you do the due diligence up front, to cover every aspect. Not that mistakes don't happen,
Sure,
but it sounds like you guys do a damn good job at making sure you're protecting your client's interest.
Absolutely.
Which is the most important part of this is, and I always say that I would rather protect my client's interest than to make a dollar on it. You know what?
Absolutely.
That's the most important
That's the
part
number
of
one
it.
goal is to always protect your client first. Everything else follows that.
Yeah.
and like I said, it comes back to you and I when we had our experience a couple of years ago. I mean, look, it was the COVID outbreak.
Yeah.
And you're concerned about everybody's well-being. I mean, financially, you don't want to blow deals up.
No.
Yeah.
You don't want to have problems, so you continue to come at the project until you have some kind of solution.
Yeah.
Even stuff that's out of contract, you're still there to give advice.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, we never violate our, client privilege, of course, but we want to help everybody involved. We don't just want to look out for the client.
Yeah.
We want the process to work.
Yeah.
We don't want to stop anything. That's
Right.
not what we're here to do.
One of the things I catch a lot of flack for is no matter how big or how small the deal is, I always tell my clients, make sure you have an attorney review the contract. Sure. Make sure you have an attorney review the lease, right? Because at the end of the day, I can't fight in court for them. Yeah. And look, there's a lot of attorneys out there I love. I love them all. Love all you guys, right? But they don't always help me get deals done because they have to advise them in the right way. But at the end of the day, if you're not protecting your client, you're losing in the long run. Yeah. You might make that quick deal, but if you don't have a reputation of trying to protect and trying to help, that long money's not going to be there. That long career is not going to be there. Yeah. Speaking of long career, you guys have been in the game a long time. We talked about the beach. Talked about Shane was mentioning how good of a job you're doing. You were talking about how you want more jobs at the beach, right? Yeah. So if there's any hotel developers or anybody in Ocean City right now watching this episode, make sure you contact Hillis-Carnes Engineering Associates for all your engineering needs. As I said, they will take you from the roof to the ground and down. Now, speaking of ground and down, let's get down and dirty again. You were mentioning things slowed up some until the green energy kind of wave started kicking in. I think everybody in our industry right now is really worried about where the economy is going. We talked about that a little bit briefly earlier. What are you guys seeing on your side of things that might either give some people some hope or may cause some concern? What are you guys seeing right now?
Well, on my standpoint, in the kind of the general order of things, a lot of times I will see a project before it goes to that construction materials testing phase because until somebody buys or sells the property, oftentimes none of that stuff happens. What I've seen is, again, it's been a little bit of a temporary slowdown, green energy and some local government work as well.
Yeah.
But there is still some private investor stuff happening. I feel like and look, I'm not a financial advisor, not even close.
Yeah,
I still work at Hills-Carnes.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, with the market being what it is, I feel like a wise investment is real estate right now. And I think it's going to keep on going.
Yeah.
What it's going to do in the future? Do I think we're heading toward 2008? I don't think so, but I don't know.
Yeah,
Matt, nobody does. We'd all be extremely wealthy if we knew that for sure.
You're right about that.
So, but we'll see.
Residential construction is still going good right now.
Yeah,
even the interest rates bumping up a little bit, they're still rolling.
Yeah,
building houses all over Delaware, like you were saying before.
Yeah. Well, I have a question then. So again, you guys are not experts in this field, but from what you see, do you see a lot of more development? People contacting you guys about phase one processes in the area because we have a lot of land down here.
Sure.
So I think a lot of people feel more comfortable hearing that. Is there other opportunities coming in the marketplace for residential? Is it residential building? Is it jobs? New jobs, new developments that are coming in for. Hey, is there a Crackle Barrel coming in? Maybe you can answer that, Matt.
No comment. No, anything about that? No comment.
Long rumored.
Yeah, right, right. But is there? I think people want to know that there's stability in the market in terms of that.
Sure.
And as long as they see things going up.
Yeah.
People feel
more comfortable.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think you guys are well aware that Salisbury is, especially right here in the center, area. There's some pretty big stuff coming.
Yeah.
And, it's really multifaceted, both residential and commercial.
Yeah.
So I think you have that to look forward to. We're still getting the requests mostly for existing businesses to be purchased. and small renovations, things of that nature. That's what we're seeing now. I tell you, at the beginning of this year, I was underwater. It was so much work coming in. And we are not where we were at the first half of the year. But we're still having work trickle in. It's still coming in.
That's good.
And I mean, considering I think there is a lot of fear, the fact that we still have work coming in tells you that there's a lot of opportunity in this area. There is a lot of open land. To be developed.
Well, I think I've always heard this too, and I have no idea about it. So this may be a dumb question, but with chicken farms being prevalent down here, is that an issue with like development? Because how close can you be to a chicken farm where you can have a residential or commercial building built?
To be honest with you, I think that's more of a concern just from a aesthetics standpoint.
Okay,
Less so, I tell you, it's something else we do. We both do. We are certified construction reviewers in the state of Delaware. We do stormwater inspections. There's a lot of concern for nutrient runoff.
That's what. So that's what I always hear.
So there is a concern from that standpoint. Now, is the chicken house ultra hazardous to use specifically? Not necessarily. I mean, there's nitrogen and phosphorus and things like that come from it, but those chemicals are, they have very high thresholds for toxicity and being deemed hazardous. So at the end of the day, I think it does pose more of a challenge as far as managing stormwater runoff, sediment migration, things of that nature. So there's a component, but the industry has reacted to that. There's very strict stormwater plans in place. They have to have their silt sacks and inlets as their their inlet protections. Silt sacks for dewatering areas. Because they don't want to send a bunch of sediment off. But that's across everywhere. That's not just specific for chicken farms.
And I tell you, the chicken industry in general is definitely booming right now. You got Mount Air farms building everywhere at their plants and expanding.
So let's transition to something more serious.
All right.
Football.
All right.
Let's talk football. Nick, you're a big Ravens fan.
I wasn't yesterday.
So I tell you, yesterday, I think I owe your D-backs maybe a Christmas card, because Shane and I have an ongoing bet in the studio about Tua Tagliabue. Tua, I don't know how you pronounce it. I bet Shane $100 at the beginning of the season that Tua would throw for 3,000 yards. He gave me good odds. 3,000 isn't a lot.
I was going to say.
And so I got to
He's
thank
got a head start.
the
He's played two defenses that are JV, man, right now.
You should have done your homework on their schedule, man. No,
did you throw Mike McDonald some money in that bet too?
I should have. But no, what's your thoughts on the Ravens, man? Tell me about it.
Look, it's like we talked about before, man. They don't have a preseason anymore. They don't play starters, and they shouldn't, because these guys they get injured. So I think they're figuring a lot of things out. Look, I like Lamar Jackson. I've taken so many beatings from my friends and Joe Flacco guys. I think Lamar is not the problem with the team. You can't give up 6 touchdowns to Tua. I have my own opinions about Tua.
Hey, your own opinion. We're on the same page here.
I think the guy's fine. I don't think he's terrible.
Tua's made of glass. Okay, let's. Yesterday I had to deal with this guy texting me while I'm at the beach, being like, "You see what Tua's doing, right? He's cutting them apart," and I'm like. Well, they were down by. It was at one point, wasn't it 34-13? I think it was.
It was a 21-point lead.
Yeah, they had a 21-point lead, so they had to throw the ball.
And then throw it. They did.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the sad part is, at some point in time, I'm like, can the Ravens defense can someone out there show up?
I mean, like I said, when you have Patrick Queen covering Tyreek Hill, go there. Go there right now.
I mean. Listen, it brought back a lot of bad memories of 13 seconds watching those Tyreek Hill just carve apart that middle of the defense. I'm like, can someone do something? Just put a helmet on him. Just put a helmet
Tyreek
on
Hill
him.
he's unbelievable.
And then you got Waddle on the other side. I mean, that's a pair.
That is a pair.
Do you worry at all about Lamar Jackson re-signing?
Do I worry? I don't know that I worry. I feel like there's arguments on both sides of the fence. Look. I think this is a different league now. And I say this to everybody when I defend Lamar Jackson. You draft Lamar Jackson 2010, I'm terrified. He's not going to make it half a season, because you were crushing people back then. With this version of the NFL, I think he's a really good fit. Look, the guy Lamar Jackson can't throw. Well, he threw yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, in the second half of the Jets game in the rain, threw pretty well there too.
Yeah.
So I think the Raven, and now at the same time, I've been through the Joe Flacco experience.
Yeah.
You know, look, they paid Joe Flacco a lot of money. They got one good year out of him. Well, Gary Kubiak is the offensive coordinator in 2014. Had a great year. All the other years, trash. Not good.
And here's the thing. Here's something to be said for all these people, pure pocket passers in Baltimore. Everyone who says they want a pure pocket passer.
You don't trust me. We got one at the Red Commanders.
Lamar Jackson got hurt last year in the pocket.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing. Joe Flacco was a pure pocket passer for years, and they hated him.
Those guys are statues. These guys standing there waiting to get hit.
Exactly. Well, and here's the thing. I'm everybody knows Buffalo Bills fan, huge Josh Allen guy. There's 2 quarterbacks that came out of that class that were not expected to be at the top of it. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson.
Sure.
Yeah.
And both of them have 2 common themes about they can run.
Yeah.
They can extend the play. And I've always been critical of Lamar extending too much.
Sure.
Because he is such a super athlete.
Yeah.
So I understand the argument of not paying him because you're scared of that. But I think the first 2 games he's shown that he's evolved his passing game.
And look, the Ravens aren't doing him any favor. That offensive line, look, 2009. What's the difference 2019 and today, and years past? The offensive line.
Oh yeah,
the offensive line was Hall of Famer, arguably. Marshall Yonda, no longer on the team. Ronnie Stanley was an All-Pro for him. He's a ghost ever since then.
Yeah,
you know.
They drafted Orlando Brown Jr. He was playing. He was a solid right tackle.
He was stellar at right tackle.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So they had people around pieces, and they had Mark Andrews as a good tight end that could chip.
Yeah, and he's still really good. The missing part of that was 2019. They had Nick Boyle, which was a killer as far as blocking was concerned.
Yeah,
and he's not been the same since.
And then I think underrated was Mark Ingram as a blocker out of the he was a very good solid blocking running back.
Absolutely.
And not to say that their guys don't do it now, but Mark Ingram likes to get dirty.
Oh yeah, he does.
You got to have that type of running back in today's game too, because it's such a passing oriented league.
Yeah,
you know, you have to have if you can't pass block, it's going to be hard for you to be in the game.
Well, I had this argument the other day about Hollywood Brown.
Yeah,
Hollywood Brown, I don't think was ever suited for that offense.
No, I was never a big fan. We
had more drops last year.
We don't need guys to drop passes.
Yeah,
I mean,
if you guys had an Anquan Bolden, that could go in that. Well, here's the thing: if you put DK Metcalf as wide receiver there, he's built for that team.
Sure,
because that intermediate, that big, thick guy that comes across the middle. Oh, they would kill.
He's built just like Anquan Bolden.
But think about Mark Andrews. He kills it in between those hashes. He is unguardable between the hashes.
Speaking of killing it, I think we've killed it today. The guys in the studio always like us to wrap up under an hour. We're just about there. I will say this. One of the themes we've been talking about with football kind of relates to the whole episode, right? Because you were talking about the old school quarterback of the statue, as Josh said, or the new mobile style quarterback. And it sounds like Hillis-Carnes is made the jump to the modern world as far as the technology goes. And you guys are definitely the guys that call for that quick service-driven, type of program that everybody's looking for right now.
We're going to get out of the pocket and scoot around and make some things happen.
That's it. Yeah, exactly. So, if you guys are looking for somebody who's up to speed on the way the modern world works, especially in the engineering game, Hillis-Carnes are the guys to talk to. Look, I'd like to actually talk to you a little bit longer about fantasy football off air because it'd probably go for 2 or 3 hours. But I heard you're a fan. I'm a big fan too. But either way, we got to go. We really appreciate you guys coming on the show today.
Yes,
and that's pretty much it, guys. We'll see you next time right here on Prop Culture. See ya.